Hello everybody, and welcome back to For the Curious. This is the first podcast in a while. I believe in the last podcast episode, or maybe the one before that, I mentioned that a weekly podcast was going to be my goal. Things change, and life got busy again. I believe since the last time I put out a podcast, I've had a baby. I don't believe I've had a baby. I believe that our son Judah was born in the time that I put out the last podcast. So that's obviously made me a lot busier. Work has picked back up with the semester starting again for those who are in school that I work with. And yeah, various things going on. But anyway, this episode I wanted to put out one as just something to get the podcast going again, kind of continue my process of figuring out what this looks like and what this is for, if it has utility in my life or not. And I think that it really does have utility when I find the time for it, and when I'm able to think through these topics that I want to discuss on this podcast. And hopefully it will lead to further conversations down the road, either with me and future guests, as the accompanying podcast, Points of Intersection, serves that particular purpose. For this podcast is conversations related to the topics that I discuss on this podcast, but then also information that will be helpful to whoever's out there listening. So with that being said, I want to cut straight to the point here. This podcast being about Tesla Motors, if you will, and what the company looks like at this point. Its stock going up and down, especially since the COVID pandemic hit, the developments in the company, and I also wanted to somewhat formally announce, not for the sake of being braggadocious, but just for the sake of stating that I have some kind of stake in this game, is that I purchased a Model 3 recently. The purchase date was a week ago today, I guess. It's 1:19 in the morning on October 3rd now. So it is officially a week ago that I purchased my Model 3. So I will probably talk about a few of my experiences with the car since my purchase. And yeah, but I wanted to start off kind of by just analyzing Tesla as a company. And it's obvious that there are a lot of people, especially as it involves the stock market, who dislike Tesla. Those who feel like the stock is overvalued, those who feel like electric vehicles, more wholly or more big picture, cannot be the answer for the future. Although that crowd, I would say, is dwindling more and more, who feel like electric vehicles are not the future. As an example, VW just came out with an all-electric SUV. Ford has made announcements to come out with all-electric F-150s. They had previously made announcements for I believe it's a 2021 Ford Mustang, which is all-electric and SUV. So that is just a few examples of car companies getting into the electric vehicle market, with Tesla being the pioneer in that field. And related to the value of the stock, again, I think that obviously the stock market has gone crazy up and crazy down during the COVID pandemic. It went way down, bottomed out. It was, I believe it's technically a stock market crash, what happened in March, at the news of COVID breaking out into the United States and people getting first sick with the pandemic. The stock market went way down. Tesla stock in particular, if I remember correctly, went from something like 380 or so down to the low hundreds. Might have even dipped down into the 90s or 80s per stock. And then since then, it had risen all the way up to $2,200 approximately per stock. I'm not getting exact numbers here because the point of this podcast is not to discuss exactly the stock numbers on Tesla. Although I will say that I invested in Tesla during that time and made a decent amount of money from that investment. That is not the point either. The point is that I believe that Tesla represents something bigger than the present moment. I believe that electric vehicles are the future, and I will talk a little more about those, about why I feel that way. But first and foremost, those investors who have decided to invest in Tesla, the old school stock market, bulls or bears, more specifically bears in the case of Tesla, who believe the company is very overvalued, who feel like it is going to plummet again once the stock market stabilizes somewhat. And that can be an opinion around tech stocks more generally, including Apple, who had a stock split last month along with Tesla. Zoom especially. I've read that this year is the year of Zoom and Tesla, and that was said begrudgingly by the stock analyst who said it or who wrote it. And I just have a generally negative atmospheric vibe around the rising tech stocks, particularly Tesla and Zoom. And I think that part of that is that Robinhood, if you're not familiar with the app Robinhood, it was the first that I'm aware of that did zero commission fees for trading in the stock market. And the founders of that company in particular said that that was for the purpose of democratizing the stock market and allowing more people to be involved in it, not just the extremely wealthy who could afford to, buy up stocks left and right and cash in when the opportunity arose and then cash out when the stock market dropped. But instead, the everyday person could have zero commission trading fees and be able to be in that process and invest well, as opposed to the past when it was an average of like $7 per commission fee per trade. So with that being said, I believe that there is a general antagonism from the old guard of the stock market toward those Robin Hooders, if you will. It's interesting, the name Robin Hood. Obviously, it refers to the mythological figure who stole from the rich to give to the poor. So Robinhood, the app, or the founders of the app, are not shy about their intentions of, again, democratizing the process, not only allowing the rich to get richer, but also allowing the savvy investors who might not already be rich to gain and to invest well. And I think Warren Buffett is an interesting figurehead in that. As someone who, is called the Oracle of Omaha, he is the most successful stock trader of the last few decades at least. And he is very wary of Tesla in particular. He's very wary of believe what he has called a stock market bubble, saying that those who make big risks and who invest in companies trying to gain money and not to invest in the company for the company's sake, they are hastening another stock market crash. To which, when I read that, interested me because the stock market crash, the latest one, is March 2020. It dipped very close to zero at that point for a lot of stocks. And if there was another crash, it wouldn't be so unprecedented because we just experienced it. We did bounce back. Those who invested at the 0 point or close to it gained a lot of money in the interim. I've heard that people staying at home during the pandemic also led to more people investing in the stock market. I would be in that boat also. I was sick for about 2.5 weeks and was trapped in my home, self-quarantining for about 2 weeks back in, I believe it was late March to early April. So right along that timeline of when COVID was really making a big impact in the United States. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of just fear about the whole thing. But people were starting to invest in the stock market like they hadn't before. And it's interesting to me that Tesla has taken flack for being overvalued. But again, I want to just emphasize with them that I believe electric vehicles are the future of automotion, of automotives. And as Elon Musk has said, you might not even be able to call Tesla a car necessarily. It is something else. Other people have said that Tesla is a tech company that just happens to make cars. So they are versatile. They are future-oriented. They are on the cutting edge of technology. And I'll just hop in with that and talk about my experience with a Model 3. Since I've been a proud owner for a week now, it has been a thrill ride to own that vehicle. And it's just been a lot of fun. Every time I get behind the wheel, I'm excited to do so. Like I've been with previous cars. I remember the first Mustang I got after driving a 93 Civic with a missing front bumper to upgrading to a 2001 Ford Mustang. And that felt like a huge jump to me. Obviously, it was in some respects, but going from driving gas-powered vehicles all my life to suddenly driving an all-electric vehicle that has a great 0 to 60 by pretty much any standard is a huge difference. I had a friend, since I did pick up the vehicle from Tesla Superior in Superior, Colorado, I let my friend get behind the wheel, and I won't name names, but he did 0 to 60 in a 35 mile an hour speed limit zone, and it didn't take long, and it felt like I was on a roller coaster with my my stomach and the back of my throat, and it's quite the experience. I'll just say that. I do have to shout out Graham Stephan, who is obviously one of the more famous, more prolific YouTubers at this time, for his Model 3 video explaining how he bought a Model 3, writing off as a business expense and paying very little monthly when it was all said and done for his Model 3. Since I saw that video, I really made it a goal of mine to have the Model 3 be my next vehicle purchase. So it took 3 or 4 months to save up the money for the down payment. But if you haven't seen Graham Stephan's Model 3 video, go check that out. I have included my referral link to Tesla in this video. No pressure to go out and buy a Tesla, but I will explain just a few more reasons I believe it matters that Tesla is a company of the future, why oil and gas might be opposed to it, why the fires in California and Colorado, my home state, matter right now. I'll talk a little bit about Battery Day. I've already talked about Warren Buffett and some of the other Tesla stock haters, but I also want to talk about Piedmont Lithium and why that rose a lot since they made a 5-year deal with Tesla recently. So let's start at the top of that. Just as a side note, Tesla is ranked in the tops of every category. It is a 5 out of 5 in every major category, including safety. And they're just great cars. I don't think anyone would argue that who's gotten behind the wheel of one. My brother and I, my younger brother, Jacob and I went to a Tesla dealership a few months back, shortly after I watched that Graham Stephan video, and it was a whole different experience. My brother and I actually both felt a bit car sick afterwards, just because of the difference in experience being behind the wheel of Tesla vehicles versus gas power that we had gotten used to for the rest of our lives up to that point. But big oil and gas obviously does play a part here. There are people who have lost their jobs in oil and gas recently, and interestingly, the leader of Saudi Arabia recently came out and said that Saudi Arabia is trying to move away from oil and gas, and he asked for investor help for that purpose. And oil and gas as a whole has been compared not just by Elon Musk, but also by others to the tobacco industry of decades ago, who said this doesn't hurt, you'll be fine if you smoke tobacco or consume tobacco products. Similarly, oil and gas is now saying that we have enough to last a long time. They might be climate change deniers. But that brings me to the fires in California and Colorado. It can be argued for sure that the fires are something of a natural phenomenon. I did read in a recent article that the fires, I believe it was in Colorado, but it had been about a decade since that particular part of the forest had burned. And in nature, fire, as I'm sure most of my viewers, if not all, are aware of this, fire plays a role in decomposing the old and allowing for fresh growth of the seeds that were dormant, the seeds that were underneath the top layer of vegetation. So fire is not a bad thing as far as nature is concerned. So 10 years is probably a long time for a patch of the forest to not burn. Obviously, since we humans have taken over every patch that we can for the most part, we don't want fires to burn. So it might have been somewhat inevitable, one could argue. But there is lots of evidence for climate change playing a part in the fires. California seems like every summer they are on fire, which is very unfortunate for the residents, very unfortunate for those affected. In the recent presidential debate, President Trump said that he wants better land management with California. But again, this is not just a land management. This is not just a lack of diligence. It is definitely a climate change issue, and I'll try to provide links to some of that evidence here in the video notes also. But that's another reason that Tesla is important. It's important because not only is Tesla advancing zero carbon emissions vehicles, the only carbon emissions in the whole process is during the actual making of the vehicles. At that point, when they're off the line of the assembly line, they have zero carbon emissions, which matters right now. That being said, Battery Day was recently. It was September 22nd, so a little over a week, about a week and a half ago now. It was incredible by my estimation. I watched the full YouTube video, basically just the recap, the re-showing of the live event the next day. Much new technology was unveiled and shown to be in the works. Batteries in particular, obviously with Battery Day being the name, batteries were the focus. They had incredible new battery technology, not before seen technology, but the expectations were so high and the innovations were so technical as to be not understood by the general population that the stock actually dropped a lot following that event the next day. And that definitely shocked me for one. I actually told quite a few people to invest in Tesla stock because I thought it was a no-brainer. Before Battery Day, I'd seen Tesla jump huge at the stock split announcement a month prior to that and jump in other situations where Elon Musk would announce something and investors would go wild over it and buy up the stock. It did drop down. It did go back all the way back up to the levels prior to Battery Day. Actually, interestingly enough, today was another time when Tesla announced its deliveries for the quarter, and the expectations were so high at this point that they had record numbers for deliveries, but not enough to entice investors to invest more in the stock. So again, the stock dropped a bit today. In my experience, though, those invested in Tesla don't have to worry long term because it does jump, and barring a major stock market crash or near crash like what we experienced in March, Tesla should be on the up and up for a good long while now, especially because they are on the cutting edge and they are by far in the lead as regards electric vehicle technology. So one other thing regarding Piedmont Lithium, a few days ago they made a deal with Tesla. Tesla is looking to acquire more lithium leverage, more lithium resources. So Piedmont Lithium, a company that started in 1983, I believe, signed a 5-year deal with Tesla. And the stock jumped about 300% that day for Piedmont Lithium. And by the end of the day, it leveled out to about 200%. It's down to, from its base before the Tesla deal, I believe it's about at 150% of its price at that point. So still quite a huge jump for Piedmont Lithium. And that just goes to show me, for one, that people want Tesla to succeed. People want sustainable energy. People want electric vehicles that have 0% carbon emissions. And to those who are not interested in that, to those who do not believe in climate change or are still questioning it, I would honestly say that you need to get on the train or be left behind to stop impeding progress with opinions for those stock market, those old school stock market traditionalists, to stop talking about stock values and realistic business practices. The Robinhooders are here to stay. So stock value is highly democratized now. So whether that leads to high up and down fluctuations, that might be the new reality. That very well may be the new reality. The broader base of the American population wants electric vehicles to work, as does China. Tesla already has a gigafactory in the works in Germany, and soon India was teased today by Elon Musk. Apparently in opposition to big oil and gas. I think the general world population sees the need for more sustainable energy, sees where the future is going. And to that, I would say, let's get there. Let's do it. Let's have a more sustainable ecosystem, more sustainable environment, and let's all contribute as much as we can to that better, cleaner future. And that is what I wanted to share with you today. I don't know if the podcast will look more like this, just kind of like things that I am interested in talking about. It probably will depend on the reaction to this. For a quick, shameless business plug, or, you could label it that, but just to let people know what I wrote my Model 3, or what I plan to write my Model 3 off as a business expense for, is Louis and Beans Coffee. My aforementioned younger brother and I started a coffee roasting company in Northern Colorado, and we are delivering. I'll be delivering in my Tesla Model 3, and if you want more information about that, you can email me. I'll probably have a link also to the website for that, and you can learn more about Louis and Beans Coffee. With that, I'll leave you. Thanks for your time.